Winner is...
The Oscar goes to...
Oliver Stone!
Oliver Stone for Midnight Express.
Oliver Stone, born on the 4th of July.
Please welcome Oliver Stone.
I went to Nam as a soldier eventually in 67, 8. And I saw things that just shocked me. Opened my eyes. I'd never be the same again. Combat is a searing experience. And devastating to what your sense of life is worth, your sense of self. You have no illusions about yourself or what life comes down to. It comes to a very basic thing, survival.
And with some consideration for all the men and women all over the world who are in prison tonight, I thank you.
They are what? They are a reflection of you seeking something, or in a sense taking leave of something?
Taking leave and seeking, they both occur. You know, you've gone through a process and you leave it. You become a bit of what you've done, and it's sort of a benchmark that tells you I was here and now I can move on.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close, I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
All right. Okay, so are we live, Rob?
Yes, sir.
Listen, can you imagine we're watching the intro here together, okay? With the great Oliver Stone and his son, Shah, who is here. They're working. Shah just finished up a documentary, All the President's Men, which we'll talk about later on with Tucker, with a bunch of different guys, about Trump. And I'm going through the list. And again, we had you on March of 2022, okay? Right. Which, when you were on at that time, the whole Ukraine thing was new. It had just happened. So we started talking about it. And, you know, it was kind of risky to give the opinions and you gave. And we talked about, again, reminder to everybody what movies you've been a part of. If you don't mind me taking a moment and sharing this. Okay, Wall Street. We just watched it with the kids the other day, okay? Writer and director. Wall Street Money Never Sleeps with Shia LaBeouf, director. Midnight Express, writer. Conan the Barbarian, writer. Scarface, writer. Platoon, writer and director. Born on 4th of July, writer, director, producer. JFK, all three. Natural Born Killers, all three. Nixon, by the way, I loved Nixon. I can't believe most people don't watch that. Yeah. It's such a great, Anthony Hopkins, phenomenal movie with the stories you see. Evita, Any Given Sunday, Alexander, Snowden. I can keep going on. Things you've done with Lula, 2024 writer, director, Putin, all the interviews. It's great to have you here again.
Don't forget nuclear energy.
Oh, that's right, nuclear energy with Russia, which we'll get into that as well. Oliver, if you want to get a little closer to the mic, that'd be great. But it's great to have you guys here. So let me ask you, for you, you know.
Where's my camera? I don't see myself.
You have 6 cameras on you.
You have so many cameras, but for you, when you think about it yourself, Sean, to you, he's your dad.
Yeah.
But I mean, what is it for you when maybe we miss it? What do you think is the most impressive thing he's done in his career?
It's a good question.
From your perspective, not ours.
What is the most impressive thing?
Giving birth.
Yeah, I don't think you did that. Apparently, you got kicked out of the hospital because he was watching the Niners. He was watching the Niners Giants game
when you were born.
Playoff game '84.
Not before.
My wife, 84.
He got kicked out of
the Niners won, at least. He was happy.
No, that's not true. You know, it takes a long time. You have to sit there.
12 hours sometimes.
And it was a Saturday or something, and I wanted to see that game. So my wife was... I said I'm going to go out and come back, and I came back with a pizza.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. It was nauseating, the smell. She couldn't take it, so she asked me to get the fuck out. She was screaming. But then I came back. I saw him being born, by the way. I saw him coming out.
You saw him being born?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. That's cool. So what do you think it is? What do you think it is from your end? Like, because for us, again, as fans, you're on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, I was more on a certain level of personal insight, but he's got a whole other life that I don't know. I think it's hard for me to say what's most impressive. You look at the films and what he's been able to do consistently across the years is be authentic and be, a storyteller that's not beholden to the system. So you can't say what JFK is the most important film, or Platoon, Born. I mean, each one is a personal experience, right? Some people
Do you have a favorite?
This one more than the other. No, I mean, you mentioned like Wall Street, like very watchable, right? Wall Street's kind of movie you can watch
multiple times.
I agree. Scarface, you can watch it multiple times.
True.
JFK, I've probably seen the most, I would say.
Really?
Well, I like thriller, conspiracy, mystery, and it's such a rabbit hole that you start going down. You recognize there's a lot of details that you can't get on one or two tries watching it, because it's such a thorough film. Nixon also has that quality.
I just love. I was surprised how many people I asked, "Have you seen Nixon? Have you seen Nixon? Have you seen?" No, I haven't seen it. Like, I don't know why you haven't seen it. I obviously, I think it's a 3.5 hour movie, maybe 3 hour and 10-minute movie. I don't. Can you pull up how many?
312.
Is it 312? Yeah, it's a long movie, but I could not stop watching that film to learn the history and the acting and the 312. Wow, you know the exact minute. That's pretty wild that you know the minute.
Yeah, you got to fight for these things.
What do you mean you got to fight for these?
A 3-hour movie in those days was not normal at all. It was a special event. When I grew up, it was what they called an intermission film. It was a spectacle. But by the time it's 1980s, 90s, it was turned in. You had to make it as a single feature. And that because they were playing. The theater owners were putting pressure on the studios. We want quicker turnovers. We want 6 turnovers a day. We want to sell popcorn in between. There's all kinds of economic reasons for it. A 3-hour and 12 movie is a killer. You only have 4 shows, 3-day shows a day. Okay.
So like now with streaming,
you're a businessman. You should know that.
That makes sense. So you can't play that many. So I can do 2, 5 times. I can do 3, maybe 3 or 4 times.
Right.
That's the way they think.
I got
you get like a 2 o'clock, a 5 o'clock.
A comedy, that hour 45, perfect.
That's what they like.
Oh,
the hour 45.
Hour 40 even.
Well, I mean, what do they prefer? Do they prefer a 3-hour hit that gets hundreds of people coming in, or an hour 45 that 5 people show up?
JFK was a hit. Nixon was not, because I think it was a darker poster, and he was a darker man. And John Kennedy was more popular. Also, people were interested in his assassination, whereas the Nixon presidency was shrouded with ambiguities, and that was a problem, selling it. That was a problem, selling it. We didn't have a big American star. We had Anthony Hopkins, who's a very good English actor.
He wasn't a big star at the time?
No, he was not.
Are you kidding? What
his
year
previous
is this?
film was Remains of the Day, and Remains of the Day was his biggest film.
Legends of the Fall.
He was a father in that?
No, that's not true. Hopkins had won the Best Actor for Silence of the Lambs.
I'm sorry. Silence.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So So Nixon is post Silence of the Lambs?
Yes.
Meaning Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, Anthony Hopkins, to me, do you put him up there for you with guys you worked at? He's...
I put him at the top, one of the top, yeah. Up there with Al Pacino, yeah, sure. He was a wonderful man.
What makes, because for you, we were talking, the audience doesn't see this, and I said, guys, let's go, because we're already having a podcast, right? And what did you say? You said you want all of it to be, what was the word you used? You said authentic, or you want it to be, you used some word where he said he just wanted to be off the cuff. And I said, yeah, that's interesting, because in your world, do it again, 2nd take, 3rd take, 4th take. What's the most takes you've ever done in a scene?
Not that many. I'm not that patient. Maybe 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
And that's not working. I mean, I try to make change. Some directors will let it roll and roll and roll because it's tape. I don't feel that way. I feel it's a waste of energy. You got to concentrate that energy.
One time, one actor had memory problems. He was getting older, and you had to put the cue cards up and then basically force him to just read the cue cards. It was pretty painful. I don't know if that was.
Is this an actor we know, or?
Well, we shouldn't. He's a good actor. He Academy Award winner, but he.
Oh wow!
He reached that stage when drugs and stuff or whatever medications had slowed him down.
And then what do you do in that moment? Are you frustrated? Because
yeah. I had the other actor was sitting across the table from him, and those people who remember this would know that the other actor was eating the tuna fish sandwich for the scene. It was a lunch scene. So he's eating the sandwich, and he ate 17 or 18 of them, and I was really worried about his... But he was a strong guy, and he managed to absorb.
They were ham sandwiches. I think he was getting sick.
Tuna sandwiches.
That was ham, I think.
It was really hard. Yeah, hard. That's hard. Those are hard moments, man.
So
the director goes through some hells.
What when you see stuff for us who were not in it, we see the Christian Bale lose his mind clip, right? I don't know if you've seen it or not, right? You ever seen Christian Bale getting upset at the camera guys, at the light guys? Have you seen that
on Terminator 3 or 4?
Right.
He flipped out. He wasn't really happy with the film in general. I think it was not his kind of movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, and Christian Bale is a phenomenal actor. In my opinion, he's a phenomenal actor. But you see him, you see Tom Cruise, you see some of those. Is that pretty common with the temper flaring? Because as an artist, as a creator, in that moment, you're getting in such a unique state that you need zero distractions. Is that kind of...
Well, it happens quite more than you think. Yeah, people get nervous and they get upset because it takes time. And it's a grueling process over 60 days, 50 days, depends. And I've seen many people lose their temper. Everyone loses their temper on something, right? Well, it's not fun. It's not fun to be the director of that person, but that happens. And we have to live with it. It's part of life. They're happy sometimes and they're miserable some other times. But it's a hard process. It's a life process. Every film takes something out of you. I feel like it's a tree with rings around it. You've got those rings, they build up. I don't know how, in the old days, they did 50, 60, 80 films. Okay. You have to a certain point, you have to be insensitive and cut it off. It's just a role, it's just a movie. And you get into a different attitude.
You used to lose your temper a lot more, though. I think you've calmed over the years.
Who?
You used to lose your temper a lot.
Oh, not talking about myself. I'm talking about the actor.
No, but you had some big fights.
Of course I did. Every director has.
What happened with you and Shah? Something happened with Shah. Shia LaBeouf.
Nothing. Shia was a good actor. Very, he's very opinionated. That's all. So save the opinions because you don't have to tell me about the screenplay and about what you think about the movie and all that.
No, but you had a very funny conflict with Val. Right, Kilmer. You guys got along much better later, but on The Doors, remember, you were at each other's throats.
That was tough. He was a bit of a prima donna in my mind.
Val was
at that point.
At that point,
yeah.
And so for you,
but he was working very hard. Remember that, and he was doing the songs too. He was dead. He was close to dead. He cost us a fortune in massages. You know what I mean? We had about, every time he wasn't listening, we had to pay somebody. It was a fortune.
Seriously?
We went way over budget on that.
Just for massages?
Well, the film was over budget, but that was a big part of it, too.
Wow.
You don't think of these things, do you?
I mean, does it get like, there's a story of Maradona who they said, hey, we want you to be the coach of whatever Argentina. I don't know if you've heard about this or not. Where he says, yeah, no problem, but you know what? To do that, I need a bathroom, and I need my bathroom to be gold. They said, what do you mean? You ever heard this story or no? Yeah, Rob, can you pull this up to see if Maradona gold bathroom. Just you type in gold bathroom, let's see if it comes up or not. Diego Maradona's toiled seat evokes memorable, maybe you heard, or Maradona, zoom in a little bit. Argentina World Cup, Diego Maradona reportedly requested that his two high-tech toilets, heated seats, cost $150 each, to which page wonders, $50,000 office bathroom overhaul, requesting, anyways, maybe it's not this one. If you go to the picture, images, he wanted a bathroom that was golden, okay? His request was. Is that the one? It's one of those. It says Maradona. Yeah. What is the weirdest request an actor's made? And Oliver, how do you handle that when they come to you and they say, hey, Oliver, listen, this guy wants us to do X, Y, Z. I mean, I can imagine if they say Val wants to do 6 massages a day. 6 massages a day? Yes. What's the weirdest request you got?
You remember?
I wouldn't know. That's all. A lot of that just gets moved out in the deal structure in the beginning, right? And they'll put in these crazy requests like, you hear about this stuff. Will Smith has, his own private gym. He has got a trailer for his gym, and they've got to bring I've heard people have to bring their private hairdresser, their driver.
Those are the worst.
They bring on their producing. They add all kinds of.
It's the wasted money. People. Yeah, it's the fringes. That's Well, we always try to keep that down in the pictures I made because they were dedicated to a purpose. You know, we're trying to get this thing done. And the studios were never that cooperative with my stuff. It was always a struggle to get it made. You can imagine, even JFK. So you can't. It wasn't. These were not movies given to the luxury system that Hollywood had in the 80s, 90s now. But Sean is right. It's the requests would be for assistants and their publicists and that public. And by the time it grows into a little entourage of 8, 9, 10 people, special people to help them with the accent and help them with the physical trainer has to go. Sometimes the gym equipment has to go. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, get used to. It's not like the old days. Get used to life on location, for Christ's sake.
Oliver, who is a big shot, award-winning? That's the chillest, humblest, easiest to work with.
Well, I haven't worked with that many of them.
Stop it. You work with everybody.
Yeah, but they were humble at that time. Everybody was humble. Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Pacino. Tom Cruise was young. He hadn't gone into that other hyperspace. And
you're talking about Born on 4th of July.
And Charlie was normal. So Charlie Sheen. It was Willem Dafoe has always been humble. I can't really. I don't relate to those kind of people. I wouldn't hire them in the first place if possible.
What do you mean by that? What if they're the
if they
best?
had that reputation? You hear about it. You know, you don't want to have You don't want all the fringes. You have to be careful. So you have to set the rules at the beginning. Listen, I'm going to make this kind of movie. It's going to cost this amount. We got to move at this pace. Are you going to be on board or not? Otherwise, you have to walk away. But sometimes you need them to get the fucking film financed.
That's what I'm saying. Some of these guys have the name.
It becomes a double-edged sword. Or as they say, dual use.
Sean, what is, from your end, what is the sensitivity from the talent sensitivity versus the director sensitivity? How different is that?
Well, I mean, there are different ways of feeling in the world. You know, I would just to put it like this: is the director is almost like the chess player, right? They have to feel, but they have to be strategically looking at everything. The actor is immersing themselves into feelings and moods that sometimes are maddening. I did the behind the scenes on Alexander. That was my first foray into filmmaking, was doing documentaries back when the DVDs had the behind-the-scene extras, and they would have the featurettes about the making of, or, on W we did the same thing, and Nixon we did this real story. So on Alexander, I shot Fight Against Time, a feature-length documentary, and I got really good access to be able to see not fully the conversations, but to see a little bit of the dynamic. And it's like, Colin Farrell was going through deep moods and experiences and madness at some points, actually.
While the movie's being shot, you're recording him and talking to him.
Yeah, it's in the documentary, and you'll see how it's like there are points where you start to wonder, is this guy gonna end up like James Dean? Is he gonna kill himself because he's so passionate and erratic, and he was a drinker at the time, and he's Irish, and it was a little bit of it was testing his his nerves to say, okay, can he pull this off without going over the edge, right? And I think that's the issue, is always, when you pulling out a performance from an actor, it's like pushing them to a place that's uncomfortable, and that goes to the question of the conflict that sometimes occurs, is that he knows how to push buttons. There's a very famous story of telling Michael Douglas on the first day of Wall Street or second day of Wall Street, I saw the dailies from yesterday. What are you, like, a TV actor? He'll say stuff like that to provoke, right?
With a straight look or with a smile?
No, it's totally straight. I think Douglas was shocked. No?
That's probably true. It's probably true, yeah. We were having issues on the first. It was the wrong. He approached it. I have to say, he may not agree with me. He's right. But he approached the movie like it was The Streets of San Francisco or something, one of the TV series that he did. It was just not this depth that I was looking for. I needed he was a major figure in the film. He was the antagonist. And frankly, he got an Academy Award, so something happened. He deepened in that movie as an actor.
What do you tell him, though? What are you telling
Well,
them?
you have to first of all deal with it. You have to deal with what you're seeing. I mean, you may not be right. It might be too subjective, but be honest. If it's the time to be honest, sometimes you hold back.
But what I'm saying is, as a director, is a part of the director not being afraid of getting under their skin?
You have to be. You have to tell the truth to some degree. You can't just fake it. I hate those directors who always say, "Oh, great job, great job." The words become meaningless, the currency useless. You have to have some truth factor in all your relationships. Otherwise, you're not. You're a boutique. Otherwise, you're just being a showman. You're a traffic cop.
How do you manage that versus walking on eggshells around you? Was there an element of walking on eggshells around you, and is that okay?
I think I was famous for walking on eggshells.
You're walking on eggshells, or the people around you were walking on eggshells?
I don't know. What do you, come on.
You know what I'm asking? Because to me,
that's a good point.
Is the idea of keeping the standards so high, where the actor's coming and saying, "Oh shit, this isn't. I got to deal with him. I got to be ready for it," and then he's going to say something to upset you.
No, I don't. I never said do that on purpose unless something was going wrong. You know, for example, let's say an actress comes in and she's more concerned about.
Oliver, can you speak into the mic?
She's more concerned about her the way she looks and the way she doesn't give a damn about the movie or the other people. It's just her. And when you have that kind of egocentric personality, you have to move away from that. You have to get more into the shadows.
What will you say to that person?
Well, you have to start dealing with that psyche, and that's not easy sometimes because some people are very hung up on themselves.
How much of it is private? How much of it is public around everybody?
You know something? That's a good question because usually I keep everything private, but the crew feels it. The crew knows. In fact, sometimes the crew knows ahead of the director. You hear the words. You know, the ADs, they talk, and the camera crews are very sharp. They've been on a lot of movies. If the actress or actor is a dud, they know it, and they'll let you know it. If he's just not up, he or she is not up to par, they'll let you know. It's an interesting thing that goes on. It's a dynamic.
But by the way, let me ask you this. So you did Wall Street 1, the main cast is all in 2, right? Money Never Sleeps.
No Daryl Hannah, no Sean Young. Charlie just does a cameo in 2.
Oh, you're right. Charlie just does a cameo, but he is in it at least, right? There is a cameo of him. How much when you were doing Money Never Sleeps, because the movie did so well, did you call Charlie or talk to him and say, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think about this?" Or no, "Hey, Charlie, I'm doing this. I need you to do this."
Yeah, I just asked him, and he was very friendly about it. Yeah, he was making a comeback at that time.
Was he upset that he was not the guy playing in Wall Street?
No, because he was a younger man. It was another kind of time. 20 years had passed. So in other words, Gekko was 60.
Coming out of jail and Creed and all this stuff. He's coming up with his book launch.
It's another young man. And Josh Brolin was playing a key role. He was playing the Gekko role as a young man. Oh, I'm sorry. So that was a whole different ballgame. But
I was just upset they killed my character. Gordon Gekko's son was killed
and he
off.
had a daughter.
They replaced the son with a daughter.
You were in it?
No, so I was Gordon Gekko's son in the original.
That's right. Yeah.
And the son is supposed to have killed himself in the original Wall Street.
That's part of the story.
Right. Did that kind of like, hey, what's up, Dad? What's the story all about?
If you had Gordon Gekko as a father, you might kill yourself too.
I think
yeah, I'm looking at this. But
that was a great cast, and Frank Langella, I have to say, played an old tycoon. He was perfect.
By the way, I love Josh as well.
Josh was
Josh
great.
is phenomenal.
And Michael is always underrated, but he was really good in the movie.
So the reason why I asked this question, did you watch Gladiator 2?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
What'd you think about it?
I had empty calories feeling. It's certainly watchable. It's good, well made. Usually take Ridley film, but I didn't care about the people. I wasn't invested.
Your comparison of 1 versus 2.
Oh, 1 was a classic. 2 is empty calories, like a commercial product made.
I was so upset after watching 2.
Really?
I was so upset. My wife's like, "Babe, give it a break." I said, "No, babe. I'm." You know why? Because I don't think, and I'm not in the world to know it, but with the risk of after you make a movie that's a 10 to come out and do a another one. And to me, they show that it was the biggest movie Denzel's ever done money-wise. I think it was $250 million or whatever the money made. I saw the numbers. But I give it a 6.5 at best.
Well, because you're a gladiator yourself. You know, you're powerful.
Yeah,
and you probably didn't like the physique of the guy as much.
I just, the story was okay, but there was something about it. And the reason why I'm asking this question, because did you see the clip of Russell Crowe being asked about Gladiator 2 and what he said? Have you seen this or no?
No.
Please tell me neither one of you guys have seen this. Okay, so then I want to get the raw reaction from you.
Jesus.
Can you pull this up, Rob? Can you pull up the one I sent you? I texted you the clip. If you can play this clip. He's being asked about Gladiator, and this one guy says he's doing a reaction on Russell Crowe's question about it, and Russell says, "Oh my God, they better start paying me because I'm being asked so much about this movie, and I'm not even in the movie." And the question was right here. If you can play this clip, and then I'll just get to it. Go for it, Rob.
Not ask Russell Crowe about Gladiator 2.
They should be paying me for the amount of questions I've had to answer about the film that I'm not even in.
Ridley Scott recently wrapped filming for his Gladiator sequel, starring Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, and Pedro Pascal. Mescal plays a grown-up Lucius from the first film. And let's just say Russell Crowe doesn't have anything to do with the sequel and doesn't want anything to do with it.
I don't know anything about the cast. I don't know anything about the plot. Well, I wouldn't, would I? Because I'm dead. I have no idea what they're doing. And it's got nothing to do with me. In that world, I'm dead, 6 feet under. That's that. I was in Malta recently. We did a concert there. And I looked across to Fort Ricasoli, and the Colosseum's built there again, like it was in 1999. It was like a time warp. For a couple of seconds there, I was like, what year is this? I wasn't expecting that they would rebuild the Colosseum in the same place. I admit to a certain tinge of jealousy. If Ridley has decided to do a second part to that story, he will have really strong reasons.
The movie comes out right around Thanksgiving.
So you can pause. So what do you think about his response?
Whose response?
Russell's.
I think he's very diplomatic.
Have you ever worked with Russell?
No. Why?
Would you want to?
If the part was right. Why are you barking up this street for?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. The reason why I'm asking this question, Oliver, is because for me, like, Gladiator is a top 50 movie of all time. In my opinion. You can go and debate movies. It's all in the eye of the beholder. You know how this works. Like, hey, that's my type. This is your type. You talk to Mary. I'll talk to Jennifer. We're scored away, right? And for you to make the movie, is it normal when a movie is this big of a hit to not even talk to Russell and say, here's what we're... I would have never expected anything to happen with 2 without him not being asked about it. Or is that pretty normal?
No, he said he was dead. So his character was dead. This is another. It's all fiction anyway. There was nothing realistic about it.
Why don't you put a cameo in it though? Why don't you put something to like
well, they did.
Not a cameo
they had flashbacks to the original. They had moments where you see him in the original.
But he knew nothing about what's going to happen with the movie though. Would you have done it that way? Would you have done 2 differently?
Well, first of all, it would have conceived a different script. But it's important. It's a new concept. That was the way it was created, and maybe that's good. What does the dinosaur film have to do with the previous dinosaur film?
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World. What does that have to do with it? Why would you talk to the previous dinosaur?
Well, I get what you're saying when you're saying talking to the previous dinosaur. But if you watch Jurassic Park, I don't know if Jurassic Park is tied to an actor that I emotionally was affected by.
Well, that's because you're a gladiator. That's the only reason. You're subject.
But you don't see the movie. So how do you watch the movie? How different does a guy like you watch a movie?
I watch the whole thing.
You watch the cinematography. You
everything.
Watch the...
Yeah, it's a whole. It's a whole experience. It's a life. No, I don't focus on one part aspect of it.
Got it. So you just called me one-dimensional. Oliver. You hurt my feelings.
You're a businessman.
I'm walking on eggshells around you now, right? So I just got the feeling of the stories you tell. But for you, just out of curiosity, what are your favorite movies? Like, what kind of stuff do you like?
I love movies. I
love movies too, from your lens.
There's actually a few 300-400. I mean, he knows. I watch old movies along with new movies. So I mix it up, and I get confused sometimes as to what. I don't remember all the things I saw. Give me a list, and I'll tell you.
What have you watched the most?
The most?
The most times. Over and over and over and over again.
Sound of Music. I don't.
Really?
You know, there are old movies.
That's one of my dad's favorites.
My Fair Lady. There's hundreds of movies that are great. Listen. If we stop making movies now, no more movies were made. I'd be fine. I mean, there's enough there for the rest of time. You know, honestly. And also, I discover old movies that I didn't see, which is a wonderful experience. And I think you know what, in the Renaissance, there's a period when they all talk about Italy and they all talk about Flemish painting. That's what we're in. The movie business was that moment. We have those hundreds and hundreds of paintings. We should enjoy them all.
Right.
I agree, but was there a flick where you guys?
But that's the problem. That's what critics do. I don't want to do that. They say the 10 best, the best. That's such bullshit.
That's not the question, though. The question
is...
Yeah,
it is, because you tend to narrow things down. People have to say, I saw that movie, but it's better than that one and that one. Come on. Just wake up. Enjoy the whole thing.
Do you know what movie I watched, like, God knows how many times, that nobody would ever say it's, like, one of the greatest movies of all time? Cocktails. I swear to God, Cocktails with Tom Cruise and what's his name? Is it not Christopher?
Yeah, that's
who's in Cocktails? What's the other guy's name? Brian Brown. Oh my God, he crushed it in that movie, right? The barman poet or whatever there was, you know.
Well, there's hundreds of those movies.
Well, I get that, but to me, that movie I watched in the Army probably 200 times. Like, we literally at our unit
it was really an escape for you at that point.
You know what it was? And maybe this is the part about the story, because remember, what's the story of Cocktails? Cocktail. It's the story of this guy that's got a dream of one day being a business owner, right? And he eventually, what does he do? He opens up Cocktail and Dreams, right? And the restaurant and all this other stuff. And then, hey, I bet you'll never spook me again. I bet I will. What's that? You know, all these moments, but no one, Cocktail is not on anybody's 100 list. I feel like taste is different than criticism, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Criticism is criticizing this movie or that movie versus, now listen, I can watch a movie like that simple over and over again, and I love
Sean,
it.
he grew up in the 1980s. Ask him what you remember. You saw it 20 times.
Well, in the 80s, to me, I still go back to. If I just feel like, you know what, I just want something fun, I love the 80s as a decade, right? Because they started to mix genres in a way where it's comedy, it's adventure, right? It's sci-fi. You think of Back to the Future, right? What genre is that? It's almost a perfect film, but like you said, it's not going to win Best Picture, and yet it's one of the most classic. And a lot of the most classic films that we think and we want to watch every year, whatever, you know, whether it's Wonderful Life. I don't think Wonderful Life won Best Picture. What didn't do well when it opened.
But what are some of the films that did less well in the 80s you loved?
Countless.
What was the horror film?
The Lost Boys, The Monster Squad.
The Lost Boys.
Right? I mean.
The horror films that you loved.
I mean, too many. I saw them all when I was young. And so.
Candyman.
Yeah, Candyman was fun. You know, that's why I think when you ask about like films, I always say to people, what's your favorite experience in your life? What's your favorite moment in your life? Go back in your life. Because I think that's it. It's like a film is a moment, an experience that you have. Maybe it's with the people you watch it with, right? Sometimes it's the date you're on, or just the experience of, oh wow, that brought me to. I was in the dumps, and I watched that movie. Or I remember being in high school and waiting for Friday night to go see American Pie because it was like going to take me out of this experience and take me somewhere else. So you can't really say this is better than that. They're just moments in our lives.
Oh, I fully agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, to me, it's the, moments of, like, Rocky IV.
Yeah.
I can't. You know why I watched that movie so many times? My mother's side, they were communists. They were all part of the Two-Day Party. Two-Day Party back in the days, you may know the Two-Day Party from back in the days. They were communists. My dad, imperialist. So watching Rocky, is mom and dad. Can communists and Americans come together, right? Can these two guys find a way to agree? It didn't happen. They got married and divorced twice to each other, right? But there's a story to it. So for me, Rocky IV, I watched it in Iran in Farsi. Think about how Rocky sounds speaking Farsi, right? Because that's how we would, when you would buy, the guy would sell it to you with a guy that speaks Farsi. No, I agree with you. 80s, to me, not only some of the best movies, but I think 80s is also Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
80s music. 80s music is the best. I think it's the best decade of music,
I'm
period.
with you on that. Yeah.
So maybe let me go a different angle here, question-wise, for you guys.
Yeah.
Oliver. Sports, are you a sports guy? Do you like sports? Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, are you also sports? You're
Well,
a big guy yourself.
I told you he was watching football on the day I was born. We know 49ers.
Is it just football or is it all
baseball,
sport?
like
Okay,
baseball,
so all
football.
sport. Okay, so when you talk about guys that play two sports, Brian Jordan, Deion Sanders,
Yeah.
You got a few of these guys, Bo Jackson,
Jackson.
right? You got like a handful of these guys that did both, and they did pretty well. Deion's probably one of the better ones that was able to.
Michael Jordan tried it.
Michael Jordan tried it, but Deion actually succeeded.
Deion was great.
Deion was
He
great
was
on both.
amazing.
Braves and all the stuff that he did. But the question is, in movie, is it a different sport to go from making movies to making documentaries, or is it the same sport?
Well, it's the same process in a sense. Documentaries are very important to me, and I did 20 of them or 15, I don't know. But the reason is that it brings you back to the research world, the real world, the world that you're actually dealing with people who are live, and you're getting in touch with that aspect of yourself. Whereas if you live on a stage or live with the fictional film, it's another world. It's artificial, and you're constantly trying to create realities. So it's a real challenge. That's why it's important to stay in touch with the real world. And a lot of Hollywood people do not. I mean, the reason I'm into contemporary events, you look at the films I did in the last 20, the World Trade Center, the film of George Bush, I stayed current. I wanted to know what was going on, and the last one was Snowden. That was right we did it on the cusp of what happened. And it was very important to me to know what was going on in computers at that point. I don't regret that. They may not have done as well because the American century changed. After 2001, we became another animal, and that affected the culture and the appreciation. And the generation changed, and a new generation came along who didn't know the same things that the 1980s and 70s generation knew. Think about it that way.
Is that fair to say that you're an anomaly for that?
No, I think I cared about events that were going on around us. And when I see some of the treatment of the current events, Hollywood doesn't care. They don't base their films on that. They don't want to reflect reality necessarily. They want to, they'd love to get the money from it, but it's a creation of fantasy too. And the films don't deal with the American century. What has America become after 2001? You have to. Those films don't really deal with it. It's another more imperialist, more authoritarian, more patriotic, more militaristic. I mean, come on, that has to be reflected in movies. Maybe Gladiator reflects that, but maybe it does.
But is it common for guys at your level? There's only a handful of you guys to do movies and to do docs. That's what I mean. Is that a multi-sport
I meet
type
a lot
of
of
thing?
Hollywood directors, producers. We never talk about current events because I don't get any interest in it. We always talk about artificial stuff, which is fun sometimes. I think it talks about movies. That's another world. Documentaries as a whole. I've gotten so much introduction to the world through documentaries, through meeting Chavez and Castro, meeting the Israelis, meeting Putin, and nuclear energy. And that was not about a person. That was about an issue. Come on, that was a very difficult movie for me to make. All I talked to was scientists.
Just to your question of different sport, I would say acting and directing would be like playing two sports, right? Because they're very different ways of being. Documentary to film, it's just a different medium. Documentary is a different way of making a movie and telling a story, but it's still the same fundamental principles, right? You're either setting up cameras, your actors are either your participants, like reality show style or interview style. You're sitting down, you're talking to someone, you're feeling, okay, what's the tempo? Is this boring? Do I have to cut away to something else? Where are the visuals coming from, right? Am I going to archives or am I shooting it? So it's the same principle of storytelling. It's just maybe the budget. Generally, the budget is nowhere near what you get with the film. You don't have to stage everything. It's a little bit different. but the same principles of storytelling apply. And there are films that, you know, can apply the documentary style or the mockumentary style, right, and bring that tempo to it. And likewise, you can bring cinematic style to documentary. So I think there are many different languages. And it's like you go to film school and you watch some of these things and you're like, man, you know, the Maya Deren types and the Stan Brakhage and things like this. And, you know, there's many others. They're not necessarily the most entertaining films, but it just shows you how film, you know, how do you say, Hollywood has created a certain style for the most part, right? That's larger than life and, you know, goes back to, let's say, you know, the epics of Griffith and whatnot, and Gone with the Wind. But if you go across the world, there's many different styles of storytelling that, from a Hollywood perspective, would come across as boring, but might resonate more with a more documentary approach, like an Ozo or someone like this, you know, a Japanese approach to storytelling that might be a little bit more like day in the life and a little bit more focused on nuance that maybe a documentarian would be interested in, as opposed to a Hollywood filmmaker, right? There's different approaches to that same, it's still storytelling, it's just different ways of telling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to find out, like, you know, Justin Timberlake is a triple threat. He can sing, act, and, you know, dance. You know, when they talk about that, right? Those are different skill sets. I don't know if Denzel can dance, and I don't know if Denzel can sing. So, okay, maybe he's not, in that sense, a triple threat, right? That's what I'm saying. At this level, I'm just making movies. I'm not doing documentaries, okay? For me to go do both is not common at this level. That's why I'm asking a question about whether it's two separate sports to be played. And, you know, Oliver, what gets you to say, I want to make this movie, or what is the first spark that I want to write about this? I want to go pursue this and maybe even do a documentary on it. What's the first spark that gets you interested?
So often it's the importance of it, you know, like, to me, nuclear energy was very important because we're facing climate change. If you accept that, what are we going to do? Are we providing the solution? And if you study the issue, really study it, and talk to people, you have to doubt the conventional idea that we're going to be saved by renewables. It's the first thing that comes up. People say, well, what are we doing? Why are we not improving? Why is the carbon dioxide still the same? After all these renewables, after all the trillions of dollars we've spent, look at Germany. I mean, the whole concept of going to nuclear was caused by that, because we have to wake up, and we don't. And that's why you have to make something, because this is urgent. Now, look at that poster. There's not a person, not a face on it, right? That poster. It's not necessary. It looks like a Walt Disney space picture or something. I'm not going to run out and see that. That's the problem.
But again, so what got you to want to do that?
Because I had to. Because look, we're all going to fry. I don't want to be walking around. I don't want him to walk around and, you know, burn up. It's going to be very tough unless we deal with this energy issue. There has to be solutions. Everyone's thinking to the future. There's going to be a solution. We're going to figure it out. Well, we got to get serious now. Back then, you may not agree with me. A lot of people don't, but my God, I think it's the burning issue of our day. But beyond Ukraine, beyond Joe Biden and Donald Trump, this is a real significant issue. Look at the figures. This is disgusting.
Right. This is why, you know, Rob, this is U.S. nuclear power capacity additions by your initial operation.
Well, don't go by the U.S. You should go by China or Russia.
That's a good point. So China and Russia is a different story. But this is for us, right? So for you that did the documentary, do you have the other one as well, Rob? That we went away from it for a while, whether you want to call Chernobyl,
that's for sure. Yeah.
Whatever the reasons are.
Well, because of all the fear. It was a fear that drove us away from
it. So what did you learn at the end of the documentary?
Well, among other things, is that the fear was ridiculous because there was none of those accidents really added up to anything compared to the other waste products of other energies such as gas and oil and coal.
This is the one that answers your question for you. Construction starts of nuclear reactors in the world.
It's depressing.
From 51 to today, the orange is China. From 95, I mean, if you look at 85, 89, you barely see one or two in China and other countries. Majority of those are us. And then when you come to the last 10 years, majority of it is China.
Right.
Last 20 years. And the rest of the world isn't doing anything.
Well, they are doing. New countries are coming into it. Yeah, Russia is doing a very good job of constructing reactors abroad in other countries. They're selling the product. China is doing it, and they're working very hard. China and Russia have SMRs, which are the small modular reactors. They have them. The United States is still working on it. We're way behind, but I do believe we'll come up with a design for an SMR that will be accepted through our regulation process, which is tedious and costs. That's why it costs so much. We don't approve anything. It's like a bad business, right? We're choked. We don't allow new stuff unless it's fancy and has a purpose. Like, it's just very hard to get new designs in. We have to change our ways, and I think the SMRs hopefully will be there by 2030, hopefully. I know Westinghouse is working on one, and General Electric. They have good stuff coming.
What do you think about China investing?
China
in
is great.
reactors?
Great. They're doing so much in terms of building not only nuclear reactors, but they're building. I lament their use of coal still. Yes, that's very evil. But they are doing better and better and better, and they're amazing. Some of their buildings, amazing. They're the future.
You're saying China's the future.
It looks like it. They're doing the best, most modernistic work. And I have high hopes for the rest of the world. I mean, if you go to the East, your countries, go out there to the stands, go out to that. I did a documentary about Kazakhstan. It's an amazing place. It's very future thinking, whole new generation. Building things, creating new cities.
It's interesting when you're going into something like this, because for me, it's getting into a business. We run 9 companies. Okay, so all right. So 9 companies. How do you get into this company? You find a problem, and then you look for the solution on how you would fix it that's maybe different than others. And then what demo are people not in? And then maybe use a certain strategy, blue ocean strategy that, hey, they're not in this market or whatever. And then you make the adjustments. In a movie sense, what is that process? What is the process of doing a movie or doing a documentary? Is it, let me see what story hasn't been told? Or is it, man, I like the story, I'm going to write a script? What's that process of starting a business? Because each movie, I remember sitting down with Aaron Spicer, who said each movie is a business.
That's right. You're an entrepreneur.
You got to look at every movie as a business, right?
Yeah.
So what is the process of saying, the next business I'm going to build is going to be Wall Street? The next business we're going to build is going to be XYZ. What is that process?
Well, that's the way you think, and that's what movies are a bad deal. I mean, every time you have to make a new business every few years, it doesn't work. You make a movie and they don't accept it, they don't understand it. It's ahead of its time, behind its time, whatever. It's not that easy, So you spend 2-3 years of your life making a movie. I don't think it's an economical business. I wouldn't go into it for that reason. You go into it as an artist, and frankly, say, I want to make this. It's my passion is here. It's the most important thing in the world to me right now, and blah, blah, blah.
But there are people that look at it just as a business,
Yeah.
and they're very mercenary, and they just take whatever the gig is, and I think that's the really hard thing to navigate. I mean, Scorsese always said he did one film for himself and one film for Hollywood, right? It's like a compromise.
One film for himself and one film for Hollywood.
Right.
And Hollywood is the money one, for himself is the art.
Right. That's what he said, at least.
Interesting.
Basically,
would you agree with that? Like that format?
No, it didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me because you have to have a certain. He does what he does. You have to admire him. He was my teacher at NYU.
Scorsese.
He's lasted this long, and he's great. Yeah, he's good. And listen, he's made his deal. He's found his way.
You're a disagreeable man is the feeling I get, which is needed to be a strong man. No, that's a compliment. I don't say that in a. Because the only reason you would be willing to do, entertain these documentaries or movies is because you don't give a shit what the market thinks. Well, you're trying to find out what you're interested in, right? In my impression of it.
I followed my heart.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. So to me, one of the qualities of an alpha male is that you disagree, you debate. You're like, no, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think that's the right way to go about it, right?
Yeah.
So when you did go through Scorsese and you're learning from whoever it is, were you at any point as a young man coming to wanted to get into space? I don't know if I agree with that. I wouldn't do it that way. Did you have those moments as a young man in his class?
Not then, no, because I was learning the trade. I was paying attention.
How about later on?
Well, no, his dad used to say, right, is that your dad used to always come out of the movie and say, we could have done it better, right? And so your dad kind of put that into your mind of starting to think about maybe how you would have done a film differently.
Yeah, my father would always talk about we could have done it better, meaning there was something wrong with a hole in the movie, the hole in the story, the logic of it. But that you become too logic ridden, and sometimes that undercuts you. And that's happened to me. I made films so, in a way, they wound themselves into a knot by the third act, and then you got to get out of the knot.
So your father, you're talking Louis, your grandfather Louis? Okay. So I just looked it up right now. He passed away March 16th, 85.
Right.
Next year it'll be 40 years. What movie did he get a chance to see? Did he get a chance to see any of your work, or no?
Not the features. You saw The Hand, my horror film, and Seizure, my first film out of NYU. Yeah, no, but I had written Midnight Express, so he knew that I was on my way in that business. And I've written Conan and my screenwriting stuff.
He did a cameo in Scarface.
Really?
He did. Yeah, that's
walking by down the street here in Miami.
When did Scarface come out?
In Miami, yeah.
83.
Did he watch Scarface?
Yeah, sure he did.
What did he say about it?
He got a kick out of him.
But when you watched it with him, were you uncomfortable? Were you like watching him watch it, or no? Were you just, hey, here's the art we made, let's watch it?
No, I never saw it with him because my dad was, he was an economist. He was very
logical,
very much a Wall Street man. But even at the end of his life, his conservatism was vanishing. He said at the end of his life, he said, we made a big deal about Russia all my life. That was a thing of the Cold War. It was a really big deal. He scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. So by the end of his life, by the late 70s and early 80s, Reagan, it's true, he was in the middle of the Reagan era, but even Reagan started to let up after the near scare of Able Archer in 1983. We had a near nuclear war with Russia. It was ridiculous. It was out of fear. And after that, if you remember, Reagan and Gorbachev got together in 86 and started the whole process of détente, which we've forgotten about. But we almost had a moment when we banned nuclear weapons completely from the earth. That almost happened. They'd reached a friendly moment when Reagan was a very affable man that way. And he said, why not? He said, why not? Why don't we get rid of them? And then, of course, the guys on that's my father, and the guys behind him said, no, you can't do that, you can't. But George Shultz was in favor of that. He was the Secretary of State at that time. So it's possible. I mean, we can think differently, but sometimes we close up into our balls of fear.
Did you write Wall Street based on stories he would tell you from Wall Street, or no?
No, that was based on the fact that we had all those scandals and those young people were starting to make money, you see. My dad was the old Wall Street. That's what I pictured that in the picture with Hal Holbrook and the father figure of Martin Sheen, who was a union leader. The younger crowd was amoral. A lot of them were like into the business. People were making big money. I mean, I don't know if you remember 83, 84, 85, people were making millions of dollars at the age of 28, 29. That was outrageous. We never had even seen that kind of money before. Young people were supposed to, you don't make big money until your 40s, 50s, right? That all changed. Yeah.
And later on, the movie that a lot of guys watch that was, form of Wall Street was Boiler Room. Right, where the J.T. Marlin, I think that's what it was called, the firm J.T. Marlin or whatever. That's right. So this was first time, we got a chance to watch Vin Diesel on what he did, Wood, whatever the call was, Ben Affleck, talking about his, Ferrari, this is my house, this is my this is my that. It's a phenomenal movie, but it shows the world of penny stock. And I think I even remember somebody saying this was depicting what Jordan Belfort did, that later on ended up being the Wolf of Wall Street. I read that somewhere. I may be wrong.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a penny stock crowd, but they were never mainstream. They were the side stream. The people I'm talking about were mainstream. They were joining the mainstream, and they were controlling the stocks. We had those people. They were coming on, and if you look very closely at the Gordon Gekko types, ended up being the banks by the 2010 period when I did Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, because that was the idea, is that the independent traders became this, by 2010, had so gamed the system and so inflated the system that they were the new chiefs.
What do you think about Joseph Kennedy?
What about him? I liked him. I mean, he did amazing stuff. He created a clan. He nourished his kids to become leaders, and he was a very good father in the end. He turned out to be a very good father.
Did he ever inspire you to want to do a movie on him or a documentary on him?
No, way too. No, he was the progeny. He's the progenitor of a family. I admired John, as you know, and Robert very much, and Ted too, as well as his sisters.
So you wouldn't have interest in doing a movie like? Man, I'd love to see you do something on Joseph Kennedy. It'd be
why you
what angle do you think?
Are you kidding me? Like if there's so if I ever wanted to get in 2 to 5 years, we're going to get into movies. Not right now. We're building this whole thing. We're going to, build the Burbank of East Coast here in Fort Lauderdale. We think this is a great market for it, right?
I suggest a book. If you're interested in Joe Kennedy, there's a wonderful book, fiction by Richard Condon, who wrote Manchurian Candidate. It's called Mile High.
Is it on him?
It's a wonderful book. It's about it's about Joe Kennedy, but it's a fiction.
Fictionalized version.
Mile High. What does it say?
Rob, can you send that to me so I can buy it?
I'm looking right now.
That's a
if
great
you can
story.
Send it to me, that'd be
it's
great.
A wonderful story.
Is it called Seed of Destruction? Or no, that's
Mile
not
High.
It.
It's called.
I don't see Mile High anywhere. But anyways, if you find it, send it to me.
Richard Condon, Condon. Come on, Rob, you find everything.
There you go.
Rob, if you can send that over to me, I'm going to read that book.
There it is.
1969. Oh, wow. Oh, there you go. Yeah, send it over to me. That'd be great. So it's an older book that was written on it.
Nothing wrong with that, is
there? No, I love it. I don't have any problem with that. That's why you're here. I'm borrowing your wisdom. But Joseph Kennedy, why not, right? To me, like, what is a bigger last name than the Kennedy last name? And who was the visionary behind it? The amount of stories of him sitting down with the kids at night, who's going to be the president, all these different things you hear about and, never wanted to get, at least from the books I read, didn't want to give credit to the family that he came from, a family of money where he wanted to kind of like, there's some of those stories that comes out that, he went to Harvard, president of a bank, 28 years old.
Gloria Swanson.
I don't know. I think it's a very interesting story. I think it's a very, very interesting story. And it's got such a long lifespan that it's an 80 years into,
but that's hard for movies. Remember that.
I know. So you have to go like 20 years, right? You have to go like to a scene. Is that kind of...
No rule at all.
But why are you saying it's hard to do it like that?
Because of the time span.
So then you can pick an era to go through, right?
But you just limited it.
Then if you're going to make it, I trust you to do it. I'm not...
You got to find your significant points that you want to make.
Right. Yeah, I just think that guy is one of the biggest power players we had in America, and he'd be a very interesting guy to study. I think the new era doesn't know as much about him to realize the impact he made.
There was a long period, and he was on the outs. Roosevelt wouldn't talk to him.
Right.
He was down on his luck. He couldn't get the impact he wanted. He became frustrated during the war.
He wasn't respected. And
then after the war, he bounced back with his oldest son died, killed in an accident in war. And then his second son, he groomed belatedly for the presidency. He won the Senate. He won the House in 47 or 40, about 47. And then senator in 52, right? So he groomed John as his replacement.
You don't want to do anything on him.
It's a great story, but I know the story. I mean,
I don't. The world doesn't know.
There's another story about Kennedy I would like to tell.
What's that?
But they won't let me do that. I can't tell you. I wouldn't.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Your thoughts with all these total amount of hours you put into the JFK assassination story, investigating, right? All the hours that you put into it. Okay.
I'm not going to give you a quick summation. No.
There's this guy that just I don't know if you've been following it closely. I'm sure you're very busy making movies, so maybe you're not following the news. There's this guy named Donald J. Trump that just became this thing they call in America.
What do you mean I don't follow the news?
Right? And he, Bobby is now involved. He's got a pretty heavy job, right?
I know Bobby.
Do you think, since his involvement being in there, we're finally going to get to the bottom of the CIA documents to see what really happened?
Well, there's no bottom to it because the CIA doesn't put that stuff on paper. But there are a lot of files on people in the CIA at that time, such as James Angleton. That was the big place to start. That's a counterterrorism chief of all those years. James Angleton, you've ever heard of him? A very important figure. And you have to go into him to begin. And then there's other people like Bill Harvey and Phillips, David Atlee Phillips. There's Howard Hunt. There's the other guy, George Joanides. From those guys, you should track. And they've done nothing. The CIA has done nothing to cooperate with any official. They've been the most hidden organization ever. They've only one time have they ever been examined, and that was in Frank Church's committee of 1973-4. Frank Church, great senator, and they found a nest of evil that was so intense, with so many assassinations, sabotage, against America's interests, and they told us the whole time it was for our interest. We killed people who ended up being heroes, and we paid the price. I mean, we're paying the price now, insofar as we have no idea what's our own history.
Well, I mean,
no idea of how we've thwarted history, and we're going towards a very dangerous moment right now. But that's another discussion completely.
You know about the forces involved in the coup against the Shah in '79. I mean, 78, 79, that time period, right? You saw it.
Well,
I have my impression. I want to know which one you think. Which direction are you going?
Oh, I think it was a coup. I think the U.S. and British wanted to see him go.
I agree.
I think he was too independent and powerful, and I don't know if it came at the moment.
They put him there in the first place.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he didn't become too independent and powerful for their taste.
He did.
And I think that, I don't know if it happened at the moment they discovered he had cancer, which was, I think, like 75, 6. They said, okay, he's weakening. We got to replace this. But I would say that the Arc of Crisis story, remember the Arc of Crisis that Huntington and Brzezinski were talking about in the late 70s, of this idea of this radical Islam, they were already perpetuating the notion of clash of civilizations at that time. And it's not just, saying there's a clash of civilizations between Orthodox Christianity and Islam. They were pushing for these rifts, as in Lebanon, as in, not Syria at that point, but in Iran in particular. I think the fact that Khomeini was being protected in the West is very indicative, and that the BBC was broadcasting his messages from, all of his messages being broadcast by the BBC in Iran is indicative. Because that's intelligence. That's how it works. It doesn't just work with a guy going in coup. There's different dimensions to it. You've got to prepare the population. You've got to put money towards this. You've got to make sure that you fly the guy in and say, okay, now he's your new leader. I mean, they knew who Khomeini was. You know how crazy it was to send him back, right?
Twice in exile, living in France, Paris, making tapes that they're spreading all over Iran, spreading the message. Very, very interesting what happened with that. And the Shah had the 25-year oil agreement that they had from 54 to 79 that was expiring. So these guys had a meeting because they knew he was about to be a very, very powerful man. And that was a concern of theirs, of what happened there. But I wonder, like, some of these, for you, like, do you have selfish reasons on things, like even right now, it just happened where I said, I can't find a book. And it's a Mile High, Richard Condon, can you go look it up? He looks it up. He says, here we go, we found it, right? You have the element of doing a doc to say, I was right. This is what happened. All the criticism that they write about whatever you make. Is there a desire for you to get to the bottom of JFK? Like, is there?
Of course. Well, it seems like we have already accumulated such evidence. It's prima facie, it seems. How can you deny it? And especially now that we're going through so much revelation on conspiracies left, right. This is what the world is. It's like been working that way. The United States has been working duplicitously for years to create this empire that we have, that we deny that we have. We have as 800 bases. We're all over the world. In every single spot, we have our finger everywhere. And we're stirring this constantly. We're busy like malevolent dwarfs, but we're there everywhere.
And what concerns you about that?
We're heading towards a nuclear war. We created enemies that are not necessary. That's what mostly affects me, because if we blow up this thing, it'll be like that scene on the beach when Fred Astaire says, I don't know how it started. It'll be like that. But I know how it started, because it started here. These people who are running Washington right now, these neoconservatives that are in charge, are the most dangerous people we've ever had in the world. They're the antithesis of what America was about. Antithesis.
Who?
Well, I would, right now, in this time period, it goes back to the 1990s when they formed up. But before that, it goes way back to the 1940s. Before that, to the 1919s. Right now, it would be, the Biden administration is playing with fire. They've taken this thing to the edge with Russia.
They're now the neocons? They're the new the liberals are the new neocons. How weird is that?
Isn't that so bizarre?
How weird is that, Oliver, for you?
The real liberals, people who are really into liberalism like me, who care about it, the John Stuart Mill kind, are disgusted by these people who are saying are pro-war, they're pro-interference in other people's affairs. They're trying to tell people how to live. That's not the way Mr. Mill described liberalism. Leave them alone. Let live and let live is my philosophy. And get along with your neighbors. What's going on now is Mr. Blinken and Sullivan and all these people that are in the administration are very dangerous people, because they pushed this thing with Ukraine to a place where it had no American interest is at stake, none. And Mr. Biden, without a mandate, declared that we have to weaken Russia without a mandate. He didn't put it up for voting. He said, "Do you want to go to war with Russia? Do you want to have American missiles flying into Russia?" This is outrageous. It never would have happened. You realize in Kennedy's time, it would have been a declaration of war. That's what's going on without our knowing it. We're asleep to that, because they it's like boiling the frog. They take it up, a little incline by incline.
Yeah. Remember,
how do you feel for you? Because the documentary you did with all the president's men, this is the Sean, as a guy in this documentary, you have Steve Bannon, Kash Patel, right? You have Roger Stone. You have
Tucker.
You have a bunch of Giuliani. Flynn. Okay, you got all these guys where, the media would say, Sean, what are you doing talking to all these conspiracy theorists? They're all, MAGA and all this other stuff, for you, and they went through this. What was it for you going through it as a director at the beginning with the level of skepticism you had when you're hearing about election interference, election for all this other stuff? What did you go personally yourself as a director in evolution from the beginning to the end on Trump? Your impression of Trump?
Well, so 2015, 16, I started working for RT America, right? That was in the DC-based group that had Chris Hedges, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. It had Tom Hartman, a leftist, a progressive guy, Jesse Ventura, Larry King. We had a lot of really interesting journalists, right? And we were a dissident because at that point, as you know, the media is controlled. I've understood this since I was 7 years old, being in JFK, watching the fallout from JFK, seeing the media reaction to JFK, how it was dismissed by the mainstream media. Obviously, some historians got it, but a lot of the mainstream never accepted that narrative, right? They said it's a great film, but it's bad history and it's a conspiracy theory fantasy. So I understood from 7, 8 years old that the media was lying to us. From the first Iraq War, through the Serbian War, through the second Iraq War, I knew all this stuff. I was watching it. I literally would try to tell people. So when I got a chance to work for RT, that was a way of actually having a platform for us dissidents to say things that were not acceptable on ABC, NBC, CNN, right? And they turned that in 2016. They demonized RT America into this Russian propaganda outlet. That was remember when they said that the Russians interfered in the election, half of that report, which was only like 12, 13 pages, was about RT America. That was the Russian interference narrative in the Trump election, was that RT America was pushing stories that they didn't like about fracking or about Syria or whatever it was. And they're saying, we interfered in the election. I'm sitting there going, we're Americans. We have the right to speak it's free speech in this country. We can say what we feel and think, and we're doing journalistic work. So I understood this plot, this idea of the Russia interfering with the election was so thin at that point in 2017 that after the election they released the ICA, focusing on RT America. And I go, where's the Russian collusion narrative? What did the Russians do? Did they hack in our election machines? There's no evidence of them hacking into our election machines to switch votes. So what does that mean to say they interfered in the election? It's one of the CIA kind of words, interference, Russian interference, misinformation. These are all CIA words that they put out there to confuse people. So at that point, I didn't pay attention.
Do you know that because you and your dad always talk about this stuff and you've been curious about this topic, or through investigating it, you're like, this is the CIA words they use, so psyop?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a book on the New World Order. It was my college thesis. I did conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura as a host. I did Buzzsaw as a host for many years before RT. So I've been familiar with history and Untold History of the United States. His docuseries, I worked as an editor for a year on. I gave him contributed ideas, about some of the angles and points for it. So a lot of this is just my background. So again, when I saw the Russian collusion narrative in 2016 for Trump, I liked Trump coming in because I liked the fact that he was an outsider. I thought it was Bush, Clinton. We're stuck in this rigged game, and someone came in who said, "Hey, Putin, why don't we get along with Putin? We can talk, we can work with them, we can negotiate." I said, "Good for him." As soon as he said that, the whole Russian narrative starts to boil over in the media, and everyone starts saying, he's a Russian puppet. So I didn't pay attention in 2016 to 2020. I didn't really pay attention to the whole allegations against Papadopoulos and Manafort and Carter Page and Flynn and Roger. Even though I knew Roger, I just didn't pay attention to it because I felt like, okay, this is going to boil over. There's nothing there. If there's anything really there, we'll it'll come out. But this is kind of ridiculous, right? This is years going on, years of this accusations. People like this idiot Schiff, who's now our senator, out there saying there's Russian collusion, and you just got to see it
with a certainty.
Yeah, and
there is proof. There's I don't know what word he used, but saying the fact that we have proof that there was collusion.
Yeah, and it's so embarrassing that this guy he should be like a McCarthy type, right? I mean, he should have been called out and said, you know what, you're an embarrassment. He should not be nowhere near Congress or Senate. And the fact that California elected him, it just shows how brainwashed people are over there, right? It's pretty sad. I mean, McCarthy at least got to a place where he was making accusations and they couldn't back it up, and they basically said, you're done. This guy Schiff now wins Senate. It's disgusting. So Pelosi also would say things like that. It's certain with probability or something. Like she would say these things where it's like, we know that the Russians probably interfere. They would use these words.
But it worked though. If you think about it, it worked on so many people.
Yeah.
So, but what did you learn at the end of it? You're spending time. Kash Patel is now got the head of FBI job, right? You're Steve Bannon, who strategically, that guy's brain, the amount of credit he gets on the right for being strategic, he's up there, right?
Yeah.
What they did to most of these guys, now they're in there, right? What was it at the end for you? Did you? I'm assuming you didn't vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020. Is that a fair assessment?
I voted for him in 2020.
You voted for him in
2020 2020 was very obvious what they were doing with the COVID to me.
So when he lost, you voted for him then, and was
well, did he lose?
Well,
I'm a believer that they rigged 2020.
Oh, you're from that camp.
Yeah.
Are you there as well?
I'm in the middle. I don't know, but there was a lot of evidence on Sean's side.
No, I think Rudy had good instincts, but he didn't have the time. He didn't have his forte is not he's going after mafia. He sees the conspiracy, but he's not an election guy. When it comes to election fraud, there are certain ways of presenting, and there's certain evidence. And I think that to this day, we know a lot of these things have been buried, right? Let's be honest. Whether it was certain districts, and if you can look at it very simply, you think 2020 wasn't a weird thing. Trump got 75 million votes in 2020, right? He won all the bellwethers. He easily won except for the 5 or 6 states, counties that's shut down for the night. And to me, that's, I go back to 2000. I didn't like the 2000 election because I felt like, this is weird. The Chads, right?
Bush.
It all takes is one county to throw a whole state, right? The same if you shut down elections and say we're going to come back tomorrow, and then the next day they get, they basically they know exactly how many votes they needed to overcome Trump's lead in those 5, 6 states. And that's the problem to me, is when you stop counting and then come back the next day and, well, we got just enough to beat that lead. That's suspicious, right? Come on, you got to say that doesn't add up to a logical person to say you would stop counting at any point, stop the observance at any point, and then come back knowing how many points. It's like a football game where they say, we're going to 2 minutes to go, your team's up by 2 touchdowns, we're going to come back tomorrow. And then you come back the next day and you go, yeah, we scored 3 touchdowns last night. Well, I didn't see it. Where was the observers? That's my problem with the 2020 election.
If your friends from 10 years ago who were closest to you hear you say something like that, would they say, yeah, Sean would say something like that?
Sure.
Or do you have anybody from 10 years ago that are like, Sean, stop it?
In 2004, a lot of people suspected that the machines were rigged against Kerry. There was articles written about that in Ohio. It was a very, very controversial state, and because people started questioning the voting machines back then, and many Democrats were the ones questioning it all the way through 2018. We've got video in the Giuliani episode of Kamala and all these people saying, the voting machines right now, I can take you down there and show you how to hack these machines. So why is it in 2020 we couldn't question the voting machines anymore, or the issue of
how much you think this is going to backfire on the Democrats? How
It
much
already
you think?
did.
Well, I mean, election for sure, but that's one term, right? But do you think this is going to be the types of an event that happened with Barry Goldwater 60-64, where Democrats, Republicans lost the African-American vote for decades, and from 64% of African-Americans voted Democrat.
Yeah.
The rest were conservative or independent. 4 years later, it went from 60 to 92% voting Democrat, and they got the black vote for 60 years. Do you think this was so monumental that Democrats may have had a blow to them that could last decades, or you think it's just one term?
I think Trump has the opportunity to create an historic presidency. I mean, the people around him, like we talk about Tulsi Gabbard in our series, you talk about Kash Patel, you talk about Bobby Kennedy, and many others that are solid people with good instincts, right? That could transform our they could fundamentally drain the swamp. Now, it's not going to be easy, but if they create the cultural shift, and I think it's there, a lot of people, that's why the red wave came in a way that even the popular vote won. People are sick of this system, right? But the elections are key to me, and it's not about Trump versus Kamala or anybody. If we don't have a clear, like a blockchain style of transparency when it comes to elections, that's what scares me the most, is that, we get to this place where, you can rig machines, where you don't, where you stop counting and say, we'll come back tomorrow. We need to get a clear way of doing an election where it's like a blockchain where you can see the results. Because I think there is suspicion, by the way, around some of the down ballot votes this year, to this day in some of the states that, there are questions. I think if you can have blockchain transparency, right, where it's like every vote is there, it's accounted for, you can go and you can check your vote and you can see where it. That's what we need to have as a modern society, and all done in one day, not over the course of a week or 3 months of voting. I mean, it's just got to be really clear and simple.
You know who doesn't want that? Democrats don't.
Oh, I know. I'm saying, but now is the time to change it. If we don't change it,
right.
I'm very concerned about our freedom as a.
Sean, would you consider yourself an independent or libertarian?
I'm independent. I don't fall into any category. I consider myself a constitutional Republican. I like the Constitution of the United States being a limited republic, being a limited federal government.
You're a constitutional Republican.
Yes.
And Oliver, what would you say you are? Independent?
Now, with the world shifting as it is, I'm certainly independent, but I'm leaning back like my father to the Republican side because I'm disgusted with the Democrats. And they're a constant attack. Actually, it's all their extremism of their attacks on Trump that have turned me off. The extremism of their attacks.
Such as?
Constant. What are you talking about? Everything he said was.
I've seen it.
In the newspapers, they say falsely. He falsely says, or they constantly give him an adjective, which is unfair. In other words, there's nothing objective written about him. And I saw Sean's documentary. It's wonderful, actually. One of the most affecting chapters is the one on Giuliani, who I did not like. Giuliani had reached that place because of his rah-rah patriotism in 2001. I thought it was disgusting. He was overboard. I really did. When he was most popular is when I hated him, because I thought he was taking advantage of this thing. He was no longer a prosecutor. He was an opportunist. And what happened was that he actually makes sense in this documentary. His whole position makes sense. He explains himself. And it turned me around. I said, I understand him. And now the newspapers are attacking him constantly like some kind of fraud. That's when I appreciate what he went through. You understand? It's like I'm a contrarian, I guess you could say. But it's good to have contrarians in our society. We need them. And I admire Sean, who is my son, who's done this on his own. I have nothing to do with his thinking. He's read his own books. He's formed his own conclusions. I was very impressed with what he just said. He explained these elections in a very clear, logical way to me. And frankly, we've been interfering in Russia so many times. I mean, Hillary Clinton is known for that 2006 period, the 2014 election. They were all over Russia. And here we never judge ourselves. We always say that's the other side is doing this.
We're known to rig elections. Like it's known the CIA has rigged elections abroad, right? We know that for a fact. So it's so hard. Why is it so difficult for us to fathom the CIA having rigged elections abroad? Could be involved. Yeah. And it's the same chicken come home to roost.
Which raises, of course, the assassination attempts on Trump. I don't know, man. It's so strange.
What do you think about it? Is there a part of you that's skeptical?
You have to be disturbed by it, and there's still time to go, Look at all the damage that Biden administration is doing to Trump right now. I mean, they're putting him in the spot. The problem is that they know Trump is a hothead and might. I think he's smarter now. I think he's a little bit, but he's got to consider this as a threat to him. They want him to go to. They want to go to a war or some kind of war. They trap him. Israel has blown up the Middle East, blown it up. It's just like they're remaking the Middle East. They're taking that's what they said they do. Netanyahu vowed to do this, and he's done it. So many of these countries are out of commission now, and now Iran is the fucking next target of this guy, this madman, and we're in his pocket. We have no apparent say in what he's going to do.
Netanyahu.
Yes, and AIPAC and all the Israeli mechanism that operates in the United States. Our vote, our Congress means nothing. Netanyahu comes and addresses them 3 times. They stand up like dogs, clapping for everything he says, like dogs. It was disgusting. The most disgusting moment.
There's a good point that these wars in the Middle East, as Wesley Clark pointed out, it's basically the neocon agenda, and a lot of these neocons are dual Israeli citizens, right? And so it's like, who has benefited? We were with Shimon Peres when he said, the Iraq war benefits us. He said that I remember very clearly. He's like, this secures our border against Saddam, right, on the Iraq side. The wars are all, it's as Jeffrey Sachs pointed out, this is all Israel's policy with the Middle East. It's almost like we've basically said, okay, whatever Israel wants in the Middle East, we'll do, up and including the Syria thing, which I'm curious your position. But in the series, we get into this, how much, as we know, we supported creating these Al-Qaeda in Iraq and ISIS groups, right? Jihadists, which we did in Afghanistan, by the way, in the 80s. And we've done it in Libya against Gaddafi, which was insane, right? And we did the same thing now with Syria, where again, another terrorist group is now in charge. I mean, it's pretty wild to understand that we've been fomenting these jihads against, going back to the days of Nasser, by the way. Actually, there's a long history. I think Devil's Crusade is a good book on the topic about CIA sponsorship of Muslim Brotherhood types and others against any nationalist, any Arab nationalist, and who does that ultimately benefit? Unfortunately, is Israel, because Israel hated Nasser, right? An Arab nationalist. It's not from the American perspective.
Why do you think they're able to do that? Why do you think they're able to do that? Because the part about the dual citizenship, when you ask somebody who is pro-Israel Zionists. They'll say the reason why we have the dual citizenship is because when Israel became a country, they want a lot of Americans to go back, but they didn't want to give up their U.S. citizenship, so they made it where you could have dual citizenship. So that's the argument for that, they'll say, right?
We have dual citizenship with France. I mean, I don't think there's an issue with dual citizenship. The problem is that the loyalty that we find tends to be a Zionist approach. And Israel itself is not, to me, it's like I don't say there's anything issue with Israel's existence, but the Zionist position is oftentimes greater Israel.
But what I want to ask you is
extreme.
What? Because in order to be able to do that, okay, so you're in a space where the controversy came out about Harvey, right, in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein, and for the longest time you saw pictures of Michelle Obama. Harvey Weinstein is such a I don't know if you have this clip or not, Rob. It's such a wonderful. Beacon of, I mean, she would use some words that you talk about a Billy Graham type, right? Is that the one, Rob? Can you play this clip? Go back and play the clip.
Thanking Harvey Weinstein for organizing this amazing day. Harvey.
Lower a little bit, Rob.
This is possible because of Harvey. He is a wonderful human being,
wonderful,
good friend, and just a powerhouse. And the fact that he and his team took the time to make this happen for all of you should say something, about me. Or
you see this, right? You see Oprah. You see all these guys in Hollywood. Hillary. Yeah. All of these guys that would say stuff about Harvey Weinstein. Well, what a freaking great guy, and then all of a sudden. Why are people saying all this stuff? What control does he have over everybody? You want a job in Hollywood? You want a job in this? You got to go, no. And then disruption shows up. Oh, shit. Now everybody wants to throw him under the bus. What happened to those 30 years you said nothing about?
Sure.
What happened? Because he had power and control. So this is where I'm going with it. He had leverage. The leverage was, if you want a job, you got to do X, Y, Z for me, and I'm a boss, okay? I'm not in the world. I've read about it just like what everybody else has read about. If Israel is Israel, AIPAC, all of these guys, right? And, Sachs, the interview that was done with Tucker, there's many of these right now that are coming up. If they have this much power, what leverage do they have to be able to constantly negotiate more favorably for themselves over the American people?
I think...
the question
you have to think about it as it's like a club in a way, right? And the amount of financial influence, think about the banking side of things. Think about the infrastructure of banking. A lot of this does connect to Judaism, and it's not to say that that they're bad people, but essentially, yes, there is a deep, deep, deep love and loyalty to Israel. It's interesting because we could be Israeli citizens based on our ancestry. Our ancestry of loose stone is not Zionist. Our ancestry is much more cosmopolitan. And this kind of goes to the heart of a lot of the issues, I think, at the beginning of Zionism, where the cosmopolitan Jews who said, we want to assimilate into the cultures, right, of Germany, of Europe, of America, and those who said, we want a nation, a land. And I think that there is a psychological factor to Jewish people basically saying you have to give to Israel, you have to be part of Israel, that's your nation.
When did that happen, though?
That starts in the Zionist phase of the late, but it picks up after World War I.
Late, what were you going to say, late?
Well, late 1900s is the birth, right? But then it picks up after World War I, but not really. It becomes, remember, the Zionists made deals with Nazis. The Zionists actually said Hitler was a good thing because they made a deal, the various agreements, to start to move Jews because they wanted to take Palestine. At the time that Palestine was mostly Arab, right? So they knew they were a small population. They had to bring more Jews in from Europe. And so I hate to say it, but the Holocaust, they used that Holocaust to basically say we can now create a state. And that was obviously the energy that was given by Russia and America and all the UN countries to say Israel can have a state.
And by the way, you know what I'll say to that? So here's I trust my enemies very well. By the way, I trust my enemies more than I trust my friends sometimes. You know why? Because what does your enemy think about next movie coming up. I don't know the competitive space. I'm assuming there's competition with Your Name and, you know, all these other guys that are making movies, right? I'm assuming the competition, if they can find a way to have 7,500 negative reviews written on Rotten Tomatoes about a movie you come out with, I'm assuming the dirty enemy would probably do something like that to hurt you, right? Yeah. I'm assuming the enemy would do whatever they can, that I'm trying to raise $1 billion from somebody or $500 million from somebody, to find a way for that deal to not get done if it becomes public, right? I've experienced this with guys. When I was trying to sell my company, the enemy would call the guy that wanted to buy the company and say, hey, you sure you want to go through this? And then boom. We were able to get the deal done, and we sold it for $250 million, okay? But I know, I trust the enemy. All I'm trying to ask, I'm not surprised that Israel did that.
No.
Good for them that they're doing that. I applaud you for being a good negotiator. Great. But all I'm asking is, if America, you read these books, you know, and we've all read these books. When you go through the book, the question I want to ask is, what leverage do they have for America to continue to cave when negotiating? We also want this, and that, and this. Okay. That's not how negotiation works. Like earlier we're talking about when you're signing a talent, right? Hey, I want 6 massages a day. I want my gym to be here. I want that. I want this. No. At some point, like, we're not doing that. But what leverage does this person have for you to say yes to 80% of their requests? What are we getting in exchange to say yes to this? And no matter how many people I ask that question of.
Well, I think there's a couple of factors. As I mentioned, financial. I think you do have a lot of Jewish banking. We know that. That's historical. They're deeply tied into the banking system, including to the Federal Reserve. I mean, you look at, even in Europe, the Rothschilds were the ones that got the letter from Balfour. I mean, the Rothschild obviously are a very wealthy, influential family, right? And that's not the only one. There was the Warburgs and others that were very influential in building our Federal Reserve system here. So Schiff and all these families. So again, you're talking money, but you're also talking about a base. From strategic perspective, I think that the U.S. and British saw Israel as a base into the Arab world, which I call Israel the last crusade, the Crusader kingdom, because remember, as you know, historically we fought the West Catholic Church, sent crusaders out to try to recapture Jerusalem in 1095, and they did, and then they got kicked out a couple hundred years later, right? But they never forgave that. So I think that the Catholics and the West, psychologically and militarily and historically, actually see Israel as the Crusader kingdom that gives them a foothold into the Middle East. So this is a 1,000-year war, and that's actually also how a lot of the Arabs see it, which is why people get caught up on the Jewish thing, and they miss the point of the Arabs looking at it as the West trying to have a Crusader kingdom called Israel in the Middle East. And as we know, most of the Jews that are there are from Europe. Right? They're from, whether they're Khazarian or whatnot. So they're not from that land. At least maybe they were thousands of years ago. Maybe they weren't. But the point is that this is an issue in the psychology of the Arab world, the Crusades coming back to haunt them. I think that's a big issue, and people don't look at it that way because they think of it as Jewish versus Muslim. And I think it's much deeper because, as you know, the Jews and Muslims have gotten along. The Jews used to go to the Muslim countries when they were persecuted by the Catholics. When they were persecuted in Spain, the Jews and Muslims both were persecuted in Spain and kicked out, right, by Ferdinand and Isabel in 1495, right, 1492, when Columbus was sailing. And they kicked the Jews and the Muslims out of Spain at that time. They kicked them out of, as you know, across Europe. Many times they purged them. They would go to Muslim countries, Jews would. And they all lived together side by side in Palestine and obviously in Turkey and other countries. So it wasn't a Jewish-Muslim thing. I think this is a West versus East thing, very much.
I don't know if I disagree with that.
Bravo.
But I think the question I ask is the leverage. What leverage should it have? Is it just money?
Well,
is it really just money?
What about APAC? You don't mention APAC.
But even if you go with that, right, and you look at how much APAC gives, for example, okay. And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here to get to the bottom of the
You always
argument.
do.
Yeah, and I enjoy that. I think that's the right way to be. But think about Elon Musk, right? Okay. So how much did APAC give total contribution 2024? Can you pull that up, Rob? I actually don't know the number. Total,
this is
what does that
according
say?
to Open Secrets.
So pro-Israel, is this APAC? 2 Republicans, they gave $2.2 million. 2 Democrats, they gave $2.2 million. Okay. So a total of $4.4 million, and they gave it to pro-Israel PAC candidates. So they give $29,000 more to Republicans than Democrats. Not a big difference. But can you tell me, look up total how much money AIPAC gave to everybody last year. Total money AIPAC gave, okay? In 2024. In 2024. Yeah, just typing in 2024. I actually just want to know. I guess you pulled the first one out. It's the same number?
Mm-hmm.
Really? So the number is how much? Okay, they gave $2.4 million in lobbying. The amount of contribution they got was $43 million. Okay, that's AIPAC. By the way, I thought the number was in the billions. So $43 million. Can you go type in how much Elon Musk gave Donald Trump to a PAC?
Does this include the PAC expenditures, or is a PAC excluded from that?
So watch this. Elon Musk spends $277 million to back Trump and Republican candidates. Realistically, one could say that's 50 times more, right? 55 times more. So again, for me, I really want to know.
You're ignoring the concept of influence and how long AIPAC has been around.
I don't think it's the right number you're pulling up, because I think, Rob, they spent
on PACs
$25 million to get rid of Bowman. So that's why I don't think that's the right number. And they type in how much did AIPAC spend to get rid of Bowman. Can you just Google that? Go for it.
And there you go. These PACs private? I mean, we don't know the numbers on the PACs.
Well, the NGOs are the ones that we don't know who the contributors are, right? The NGOs which, okay, there it is, that one right there. AIPAC has spent over $100 million on 2024 elections. That's the number I want to see. So very bad sign for democracy. AIPAC has spent over $100 million. AIPAC billionaire funded Super PAC has helped defeat two of the most vocal opponents of Israel, which one of them was, Jamal Bowman. And they spent a lot of money to get rid of that guy. How much was it to get rid of him? Can you pull up that number? I don't know why I think it was $25 million. Could have been a little bit more than that. But the reason why I'm making this argument is I'm making the argument to say some may not say anything about Elon because maybe Elon is supporting what you support, right? It's like, okay, hey, great. And by the way, I'm pro-Elon. I like what Elon is doing. But all I'm trying to say is, I get the frustration with the Israeli. I lived in Iran. So I have my own story with Muslims. I saw what that was like. And I witnessed it every day, 11 years. I went to Germany, lived at a refugee camp. There's a lot of Muslims there, a lot of them, Pakistani, Afghanis, a lot of them, okay? I saw what happened there. I've had an insurance company I built from 0 to 60,000 agents. We have a lot of Muslims in the company. Guess what? Phenomenal experience. I had the experience there. So, but it's not 100% across the board with everybody, right? America's 13% black. Our agency was 24% black. America's 24% Hispanic. Our agency was 51% Hispanic. When we built the insurance agency, and I got a chance to watch these guys because we're in 50 states. But sometimes, it can go in a direction where I just want to know, what is their leverage? Is the leverage holding people hostage? Is the leverage I wrote a fiction book called The Academy. And the Academy is about a secret society that's been around for a couple thousand years, that they recruit young kids and they build them into the future leaders of the world. Many presidents, many have gone through this, secret society called the Academy. And one of the stories in there is about the villain is a former deputy director of Savak in Iran under the Shah, who left early and he was working with the Shah. His name is Parviz Sabeti. I think if you can look him up, it's a very common American name, Rob. You should be able to spell that out easily. And this deputy director of Savak, who ends up, having some of the qualities of the villain, eventually finds me, okay? And he reaches out to me, says, you wrote a book. Said yes. He reads the book. Type in P-A-R-V-I-Z and then P-A-R-V-I-Z, right, P-A-R-V-I-Z, right there. Okay, so this is him. He was a former deputy director of Savak. And, you watch documentaries on him and what the Savak did in Iran.
Yeah.
It's awful.
These guys had, some of it is awful, but some of it is, where they were the CIA, the Mossad, So all of it can be said awful. CIA, Mossad, Savak, MI6.
Exactly. They were all training them too,
for sure.
Mossad and CIA.
So we can say all of them are awful, right? I mean, they've all been trained by. And then you hear what he was able to record with mullahs and Hezbollahs, who were these clergy, and then he would get stuff with women. And so he had this footage on them, right? Yeah. And that's a form of hostage.
Yeah.
You better say this or else.
Right.
I'm trying to find out, is there anything Israel has as a
Blackmail?
leverage? I'm not just saying blackmail. That's one of the forms.
Epstein was apparently Mossad and CIA, right?
I had his brother on our podcast for a few hours, yeah.
Does he think that he was both?
I asked him. He was very gray, and he was uncomfortable answering that. We did a 2-hour podcast. He did tell me that he had a mentor. Who's the mentor that he talked about Epstein? Do you remember the mentor he brought up? He talked about a mentor that taught Epstein everything. And then when I brought it up, he got very, very uncomfortable very quickly. That guy right there, Stephen Hoffenberg. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy or not.
No.
Clement Riggenworth on 450. Yeah, he helped. You know, he was one of the guys that apparently played a role of a mentor. But there was another guy as well, Rob. Yeah, Epstein's mentor, right there.
Found dead.
Yeah. Were you reading that?
Well, he was found dead in his apartment.
Yeah, he was found dead. Jeffrey Epstein, convicted fraudster, found dead in his apartment. But meaning he learned his model. So on the Epstein side, Mark never told me anything about Mossad. I asked him, I said, were you also Mossad himself? He was uncomfortable answering that directly.
Sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But that's the question.
Yeah.
My biggest question is the leverage. What did they have? There's no way. Did they have it on Congress so many times?
I think it's both. I mean, it's
the threat of saying you were going to campaign against you. That's just enough.
Exactly. It's both private and public. I mean, we just saw the Jeff Sachs interview today. All these newspapers are saying Jeffrey Sachs is anti-Semitic conspiracy theories for saying that Israel's basically foreign policy is what we're running in the Middle East, which is pretty evident. I don't think that's anti-Semitic to say that. I don't think
that's anything bad to say.
Right.
I think go research it and investigate it. Sure. I mean, March 2022, when you were here and Ukraine had happened, when did Russia-Ukraine happen? A month prior to that? February? And if you remember, you were uncomfortable. Like, at first you're like, and you and I were both a little bit skeptical about Zelensky and Ukraine. And at that time, when you said it, everybody's like, oh my God, how could you say that? The dictator Putin is the next Hitler. This Oliver Stone is so out of touch. And
the ghost of Kiev was still riding high. And then that was a CIA story, remember?
Right.
And all these different things. Zelensky calling and saying.
The documentary you did was just insane.
Ukraine on Fire.
Yeah, Ukraine on Fire was phenomenal.
I learned a lot because we actually paid attention to Ukraine after the Putin interviews. That helped me. He said to me, I said, what's the big deal about Ukraine? I thought it was like another Eastern European country that had gone to NATO. He said, for you, it's not a big deal. For us, it's a very big deal. He says that on the tape. And I think I finally understood the importance of Ukraine because they've been invaded twice through the underbelly, through Ukraine, twice by Poland. And they were invaded by Napoleon. They were invaded by the Woodrow Wilson set troops. 16 armies fought against the Bolshevik Revolution. 16 armies led by Britain and the United States. France, Poland sent a huge amount of men to.
You met a lot of people, right? World leaders.
Yeah,
you met Putin.
Yeah.
You met Maduro, I think.
Yeah, Maduro.
You met Putin. You met Chavez, Lula, Castro, Netanyahu. Which one of them?
Shimon Peres and Netanyahu. Yeah, you're right.
Which one of them that after you spent time with them, walked away, you had a bad impression of them first, but later on you're like, well, you know what? I don't have a bad impression. Which one of them were you like, oh, I was neutral, but I walked away saying, I don't know if I like this guy?
Netanyahu, yeah. I thought he was very extreme back in 2002. He was going on, and then the bomb went off as we was talking to us. It's in the film. It's called...
Persona non grata.
What?
Persona non grata.
Persona non grata. Yeah, because he goes over to the window, he says, look, and he's right. There was a bomb that was going off in a grocery store. So he was like very concerned, but he had suffered greatly because his brother, Johnny Johansson, was killed in the raid in
Uganda, wasn't it? The Uganda raid against...
They made a movie about it. What was it called?
Yeah, I don't remember the film.
The Uganda... the dictator of Uganda had taken hostages, and the Israelis went in with a commando attack, and they succeeded, and they made 2 movies about it, one with Charles Bronson. It was wonderful. But his brother was the only one killed in that raid from the Israeli side. He was killed at the very end. So he was a hero in Israel. There was a lot of vengeance, personal hatred of the Muslim. I felt that with him, that he did not trust them at all. And I felt that it was echoed by, but other people like Rabin and I also, Perez, Shimon was saying, we have to get along, always. That was his, but at the same time, he also said, you cannot trust the Arabs because what they write, what their handwriting, the way they write, is very flowery, and it's not objective like scientific. That's his interpretation. So it was an interesting viewpoint. Even Shimon, who was as humanitarian a person as I know, had distrust of the Arabs. And it's fundamental. My first wife was Lebanese, so I felt differently. I liked them. I spent time in Lebanon before the war, 75. So I have no problem. And like Sean says, I feel like it's closer to the Crusades than it is to a religious issue.
So
East-West.
Netanyahu was the only one that you walked away.
Yeah, he was dangerous. Because he had such passion, such passion. And he had a desire. He was young and strong and amazing stamina. Look at this. He's lasted like Putin. He's lasted 23 some years and in business like this. And look what he's done, though. He's taking us closer to the nuclear winter than ever. There's no other person alive that is as dangerous. He's lobbied actively for a war against Iran, which is going to be a war not just against Iran, it's going to be a war against China, it's going to be a war against Russia. It's a very dangerous man. I mean, Syria, he's gloating over Syria, but that's not over. It's going to come back and haunt him. This thing is so ugly, it's gotten out of hand, and that's because of us supporting Israel blindly without ever questioning them. Kennedy questioned them. That was the whole point that, Kennedy said this nuclear thing is going to stop. We're not going to give them nuclear weapons. And he was adamant about it, and he was going to stop it. When Johnson took over after the assassination, Johnson turned a blind eye to it. When we knew for sure that they had a weapon in 1967, Johnson made sure they didn't announce it. The Pentagon did not announce it.
What do you think also about, this policy shift? It wasn't like it was always adamantly whatever Israel wants until 2001. That's when the neocons take over. That's when the 9/11 justifies all these wars in the Middle East, so-called justifies. Obviously, what did it do? Did it bring benefit to the American people? Did it stabilize anything? No, we destabilized that region. But as I said, it's been all Israel policy and mostly Netanyahu policy. And Netanyahu is closer to Hamas. I mean, that's what's really curious, when you look at the history that, as you know, Netanyahu and company hated Arafat, right? So back in the 80s, they actually allowed Hamas to grow. That's now known that Israel was essentially allowing Hamas to grow into this beast because it played off against Arafat's, PLO and those guys, Fatah and those guys. So they use that, and I think that's what's so curious is that Hamas is it truly is Netanyahu's best weapon. I mean, at the moment that he was being indicted in the Supreme Court, I think there's a new documentary about Bibi's file, I think it's called. It's nominated. Yeah, it's being nominated for Best Picture, exposing all this corruption that he was charged with. He was gone. And then October 7th comes, and it justifies everything. It's like these moments, that justify war, as you know. Very much provocative.
You should study that.
The Bibi files?
The Bibi files, I think.
Well, it came at that very strange moment when he's about to go. Remember how close he came to being evicted?
So the angle you're taking with him is the moment you realize what happened to his brother in Uganda, which was the only one you're saying that died. From that moment on, this went from being, just a job or a career that I'm going to do because I love Israel to
personal passion.
A personal passion, crusade, cause, correcting an injustice.
Well, we didn't know him before, so you can't say what he was.
Well, I knew him at that point.
But I'm saying, before, and he was those guys were true believers from the beginning, but he people say he was part of killing Rabin. He created that atmosphere, if nothing else. Netanyahu did. Remember when Rabin was killed? Netanyahu was playing up that atmosphere.
Who was Yontan was an Israeli military officer who commanded Sayeret Matkal during the
a Harvard graduate, I think.
Was he a Harvard graduate?
Yeah, I briefly attended.
United States.
He was a real hero.
After serving the Israeli military during the Six-Day War, he briefly attended Harvard University before transferring to Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 1960. Thereafter, he was studied, returned to military in Israel. So what year did he die? 76. Is this his older brother?
Yes.
This is his older brother?
Yes.
How many years apart are they? Can you check to see when Bibi was born? Because he's 46. I don't think Bibi's into it. Okay. So 3 years older. Got it. Interesting. And this has been a commitment he's made to his brother to seek his vengeance. Is that kind of how you process it?
It's the origin of this passion.
Don't you think for somebody to get to that level of power, you almost need something like this, like to get to that level? I mean, look at Trump. He doesn't drink any alcohol. Why not? You know the story with his brother Fred, right? We hear those stories, right?
Although it was a decision before.
It was a decision before, you're right, because he told him, look, listen to me, never drink alcohol, never drink alcohol. And he's like, I'm not going to do it. And he tells his kids.
Did he learn that from Roy Cohn? I don't know if Roy Cohn was taught him.
Roy was a drinker, remember, in the movie?
Okay.
Did you watch The Apprentice?
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
I saw it twice.
Me too. I saw it twice in the first week.
I much enjoyed it. Very well done.
What was your impression?
I didn't walk away thinking that Trump was the monster of all time. That was part of that whole campaign. That's why the Democrats overdid it. They overdid everything on Trump.
The movie flopped. I don't know why.
I always said to you, if you remember correctly, I said the worst president we've ever had was George W. Bush. And I told you why. Because he started the whole war on terror. And I said, what's Trump compared to that? And, why are the Democrats having this hysteria about derangements and no one paid attention? But wait until this thing is cleared. If we ever get through it, we're going to have to look back at that period from 2001.
How do you think?
And that phony election with the Chads and all that. That was the worst moment for me in this century. I remember that night so well when I was going south with his Scalia jumping in on the Florida thing and saying there's an irregularity here, and then they suspended the recount. Remember?
You wanted Gore at that time?
I did want Gore, yes. And I think it was a key election. I thought it was the whole century turned on it in a way. It was a strange date. It was one of those things like the McKinley election in 1900.
How different you think the relationship's going to be when you're saying Kennedy and Israel? How do you think the relationship's going to be?
Kennedy
Trump
was monitoring them and saying, "What are they doing?"
I get that. I'm just thinking.
We're not allowing them to be the power in the Middle East.
How do you think it's going to be with Trump?
I'm worried about that part of it the most because I like the possibility. Trump could be, as Sean said, a crusading president. He could be really a change against war. He could move away from all these policies. But his commitment to Israel is insane because it's wholehearted and he has no modification on it. And he doesn't understand the Arab position. He doesn't understand history, frankly. I wish Sean could spend some time with him.
Well, his daughter's husband's father is Lebanese, right? Isn't he the new coordinator for some of these affairs?
Well, that'd be nice, but the Adelson money is huge, isn't it?
But I do think, I feel that if anyone can negotiate peace, I don't think that Trump likes Netanyahu. I think he has to remember that Netanyahu was the first person to call Joe Biden in 2021 or 2020 and congratulate him.
He won't forget that.
I don't think Trump forgets that. I think Trump doesn't. I don't think Trump likes Netanyahu. I think that he will, if anyone can bring peace, it is Trump, because he has to factor the Saudi position. The Saudis have gotten closer to Iran. Yeah. It's not what it was years ago. They're actually making peace. Their bricks are here. I think he has to realize that this escalation would lead to World War III. He has to see that now. And so if anyone can start to work out a deal to say, okay, how can we accommodate the Palestinians, give them some livelihood, give them some economy? Trump's got to understand that's the only future. He knows that. He knows, you start bombing things, you start destroying, it ruins economies, it ruins cultures. He has to see the path forward now is going to be negotiating with the neighbors, getting them involved.
Well, this is a key moment then in history, isn't it?
But I don't think here's my impression of Trump. I was on Jesse Waters 2 nights ago, And I said, you know what happens when you're handsome, rich, and met every famous celebrity in the world? You know what edge you have? One, no girl can sway you because you've been around beautiful women your entire life. Number two, there's nothing you can give him financially for him to be, oh my God, what a great painting, all this stuff. Nothing. So you can't buy him. And number three is he's not enamored by anybody. There is no celebrity he's going to meet where he's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm...
Can give him the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, I think, but I think after he does what he does...
But don't give it to him like Obama, prematurely.
But I think one thing with him, every single time I've heard him talk about Netanyahu, it's always the we'll see. Mm-hmm. And that's key.
I hope so.
Because we'll see is the pressure's on who? You.
Yeah.
Bibi, meaning you can't try to abuse this relationship.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what you're going to be doing.
Delivered Syria.
That's right. But that's
Biden.
Right. That's not under his watch. That's under Biden.
I wonder, it's a very key moment. This is.
Well, again, it goes back to seeing if there's one thing we learned from Trump in first term, he's not a guy that likes war. He's just not a fan of it. Right. And how many people, he said the other day in an interview, after winning, he's spoken personally. Did you hear how many world leaders he said he's spoken to? He said he's spoken over 100 world leaders already. World leaders. This is not Jamie Dimon. This is not billionaires. This is not Jeff Bezos. This is not Tim Cook, although he's met with them as well. And look at Trudeau, Canada. All of a sudden, you're getting stories about the fact that he may be stepping down and resigning and all this stuff.
Yeah, that was interesting, as well as don't forget Venezuela, which, of course, has a lot of oil.
What is you've said some good things about Maduro?
I said good things about Chavez. Yes.
Why Maduro though? What?
I don't know Maduro. I met him a few times with Hugo. Listen, I told you earlier that if Democrats were so hysterical about Trump that it turned me off. If you look at how hysterical the United States has been on Maduro and the Venezuelan revolution, it turns me off because we've lied, cheated, put other people called them president. We played every dirty trick on Venezuela we can, starving them, suffering them. And they've withstood this as best as they could. And for that, they're the underdog, man. They're the revolutionaries in this case. Believe it or not, yes, they're not a tyranny because people can leave. They leave all the time.
You don't think Maduro's a tyranny?
No, because they can leave whenever they want. They can walk across the border. Those people are there because there is a Bolivarian revolution.
He has destroyed so many people's lives.
And how many people did they make? I mean, you have to go back to the beginnings when he educated that population. He gave them a life. They didn't have a life.
See, that's the part, Oliver. See, that's why you're unique.
You don't pay attention. 98, 99.
No, the reason why you're unique, the reason why you're unique, and it's tough to put you in a place, is 1 minute you'll say one thing.
No, I'm for the people.
I know, but what I'm saying is this guy's not for his people. This guy's not for his people. When you see
the man I met,
the inflation, lifestyle.
The inflation has a lot to do with the United States, too. The lifestyle, I don't know anything about.
Yeah, but it has to do with the United States. You're saying when we put the sanctions on buying oil and doing all of that stuff? Is that?
Yeah. And all the dirty tricks that go on.
I mean, he just lost the election to...
How do you know? That's America's interpretation of it.
Not necessarily. That's his interpretation is the fact that he won 51.2% or something like that.
You know who the other candidate was?
Maria Corina Machado?
Right-wing lady. She's pretty wild. She's pretty much the old way. She's very clear distinction going back to the old Venezuela. There's no hope there.
Yeah, I had her on the podcast.
Well, I haven't met her.
Yeah. Well, look.
Please don't fall for the propaganda.
I'll tell you this.
You especially.
I'll tell you this. Here's what I would tell you. Maduro, if you are able to go to Venezuela to do an interview with him, I'd love to join you. I'd love to talk to him.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're
maybe I'll investigate that.
I'd love to go talk to him.
If Trump turns his capacity on Venezuela, then we're going to have another war. That's going to be ugly too. We don't want that.
Yeah, this is not this is not.
Those are the two threats right now.
I have
Iran and Venezuela.
I have a lot of educated Venezuelans who are good family people.
Yes, I know those
who
people.
escaped, who came here, who will say things about Maduro that is absolutely.
Yes, I've heard them. Believe me, I've heard them.
But you're defending
he's a
him.
socialist, essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
Not just any kind of socialist.
He's a Bolivarian. Okay.
Well, socialist. But I think that's the question is that really the best path forward at this point? And I think holding on to the socialist ideal feels antiquated.
Well, what do you think about Milei?
I think he's working in his way. Absolutely. Everybody from Argentina tells me that. Not everybody. Some people are suffering, yes. But the truth is you can feel both ways. You can
Respectfully, you are weird, different, and I love it.
They're not necessarily a contradiction.
They are not necessarily a contradiction. Well, I know you got a flight to catch, but by the way, Sean, before we wrap up, where can people find All the President's Men?
Yeah, for sure. All the President's Men is on Tucker Carlson's network at this time. Yeah. And
by the way, I thought it was ranked. Is this the one that was #1 on Apple or?
No, not yet. We haven't gone to Apple. It's only here. My website, seanstone.info, has links to like all my work, documentaries, books.
Can we put all of that below, Rob?
That might be a good place that people can link to.
So go to your website, and then from there they can go directly to this.
Exactly.
We'll put both of those links.
They can find other documentaries and projects, and Hollywood DC is a documentary talking about the influence of politics in the media, right, and journalism and Hollywood and film. We get into that in the hour-long special. Actually, that's a good documentary as well.
Well, we're gonna drive to that. And Sean, I've spent time with your dad. I hadn't spent time with you. But dude, you're freaking interesting as hell.
Well, thank
you.
And
I really enjoyed talking to you as just talking to you. You know, it was interesting hearing your perspective. We know the great Oliver Stone, but this was phenomenal having both of you guys here. What a great conversation. And again, put the link below. Till next time. And maybe our next time will be in Venezuela sometime.
Well,
I don't
maybe
know.
So.
Maybe we'll go to Venezuela together.
Maybe we'll come around.
You might not make it out though, Patrick.
Well, then that would validate my point. I'd call Oliver. I'm like, Oliver, come get me. You got to come get me.
I'm joking.
Anyways, guys, God bless everybody. Take care. Bye-bye, bye-bye.